What's good, YouTube? It's your boy here. I'm back at it again with another video. So probably like the most requested tutorial I've had is actually on mixing. Um, so that's what we're about to get into today. I got this beat going. I'm about to mix the whole thing. Before we get into it, I have like a few disclaimers when it comes to mixing. So like number one, when it comes to mixing and just making music in general, there's no like rules to this shit. So don't listen to what I'm saying. Don't really listen to what anyone is saying. Just make music the way that you like to. Mix the music the way that sounds good to you. And that's how you're going to find the most success with it. But with that being said, when it comes to mixing, even though it is kind of like a subjective thing, there are like songs and albums and projects that are kind of like unanimously agreed on to be like really well mixed and really well mastered and made and stuff. So one of the biggest things when you're learning about mixing that I didn't really realize for a little while, but you kind of hear a lot of engineers say it, is that you really do need to train your ears. So what I mean by that is like you're not even gonna understand what a good mix actually sounds like until you kind of listen to ones that other people say are good and learn a little bit from them. And like I said in the beginning, mixing is a subjective thing. So what might sound good to one person might sound bad to another person. As far as I'm concerned, like the most unanimously agreed on like album to be well mixed and very well like mastered and everything is good about it is The Chronic 2001 by Dr. Dre. Other mixes I personally like as far as like albums, I really like Channel Orange by Frank Ocean and Blonde. A lot of Tyler the Creator stuff. If you're into more boom bap shit like Bandana by Freddie Gibbs and Madlib, I think the mix sounds crazy on some of the songs on there too. But yeah, just keep some of that stuff in mind. Another thing too that really will help a lot is reference tracks as well. And so what a reference track is basically just playing another track next to yours and listening to the sounds and basically trying to get like the volumes and the way everything sounds as close to that track as you can. And don't feel weird about doing that too. That's something that even like the most pro high level engineers are doing. So don't trip out on using like reference tracks and stuff either. For this one, I'm gonna just keep it basic. When it comes to honestly making beats in like a DAW, you don't gotta overcomplicate the mixing. Mixing goes a lot deeper when you're recording like live instruments and actually setting up the recording process and stuff. But as long as you're starting with like some good quality sounds in your DAW, the mixing is not going to be that hard. So there's going to be a few like main things that you want to focus on that are kind of like the basics of mixing. So those are going to be number one, the levels. When you hear people talk about levels, that just means the volume. All right. So you want all your volumes on point. You don't want something that's like too loud or too quiet. And you want volumes on an individual level to all be good. You don't want one sound that's a lot higher or a lot lower than other ones. And then on the large scale too, think of like your whole beat. You don't want things too loud or too quiet on the master channel either. So it's sort of like a game of trying to get everything as loud as you can with nothing standing out too much and nothing falling behind too much. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. You know, if you're confused or if you're new to mixing, this tutorial will probably be kind of basic if you know about this stuff. But this is more for the people that are just kind of starting out making beats and shit like that and want to learn a little bit about mixing. Hopefully I can explain it in a way that kind of makes sense. So anyways, I'm going to just play some of the beat and you guys can hear how it sounds right now. I haven't really done anything since I laid it out. All the melodies are just this arcade thing. I'm going to show you guys too how to split up the arcade melodies real quick too, so I can put them to like an individual track. But let me just play it real quick. All right. So the first thing I'm actually going to do before I really start on this is put this arcade shit into like its own instrument. So right now these are all playing through like the same arcade. I just have it broken up into different patterns for like each sound, but I'm gonna lay them all out and then I'm going to render it and then like chop it up and add them to their own mixer tracks so that I can like EQ each sound individually and stuff. And so give me just a sec. I'm gonna like lay these all out real quick. All right, this should be all our sounds. So all I'm gonna do is highlight this section right here real quick, and then I'm gonna put disc recording on. Arm this little track down here, and you go up here, disc recording, ready to wave. I'm gonna make sure it's on song selection here, do start. So this part, doing this is a little tedious with arcade instruments, but in the long run, it's gonna make it easier to mix this beat and make it sound good. So now all I'm gonna do is just like chop all these up. I'm gonna have to rearrange everything too, so I'll probably skip the video in a second and do that. But now I'm gonna take each one of these and just do make unique right here. Make unique. And then I'm gonna put each one of these to like its own mixer track. So now each individual instrument on here is on like its own channel. And then real quick, I'm gonna lay out the melody too, just so it copies this. So I'm gonna like skip the video real quick. All right, y'all, I'm back. I got everything all laid out, so this pattern is the same as on here. I could have done that before starting the video. I just wanted to show that, just so if anybody knows. That's the easiest way I've found to like separate the arcade instruments if you do want to change anything. There's some editing you can do like in arcade, like you can turn stuff up and down and like change the effects and stuff, but I prefer to just like split it up so I can actually change everything a little bit more on here. But that's just like a preference thing. You don't need to do this if you use arcade. Anyway, so let's get into the mixing. The first thing that I always do when I start is just reset all of these. And if you have a mouse with the scrolly wheel, all you do is like click it on the little wheel and it resets the knob. So I'll make sure all of these volumes on here are reset. I'll get everything on here. I usually like to highlight the loudest part of the beat, which is right here. And I know that the instruments change up too. So I'm gonna highlight the part before it so I can get the instruments that go out in here too. But anyways, what I like to do usually is start with like my melodies and just the kick. I also put the whole mix in mono. Mixing in mono is like a preference thing, but I know a lot of people do it. So normally when I start with my levels and panning, I just like to put everything in mono and then I'll take it out later, see how it sounds. But anyways, I'm gonna just start with my instruments and the kick here. And so in mixing, if you know about mixing, especially in hip hop, like pretty much everything is mixed around the kick. So your kick is your kick and bass are pretty much always going to be the loudest instruments in most cases, at least for like hip hop songs. And it doesn't need to be that way, but I mean, listen to most hip hop music and that's the loudest instrument. That's just kind of part of hip hop. So I'm gonna turn up this bass first because it's really quiet. And then I like to usually put my kick and bass in mono as well. So I'm gonna start to bring in the other instruments. Oops. So I'm gonna start adding on my EQs. Main things, really like your main stuff that you're gonna want to use, especially when you're starting out learning about mixing, is the volumes. I know I just realized I started talking about this earlier and I didn't finish. So the main things that you're gonna want to use, so your volumes and levels, your panning, EQ, and then EQ and panning are kind of tied, but EQ and panning, and then reverb and delay. So first off, I usually start with like the levels and then a little bit of EQ where I need to. So this like organ whatever this pad instrument thing is, I'm gonna take out some of the low end and probably like a little bit of up here too. I'm gonna bring down the kick and the bass a little bit actually. I'm gonna rename these two real quick. Renaming your instruments is a pretty important thing to do because if you have a lot of tracks going, you will like start to lose track of which one is which and stuff. So this type of stuff, like, it seems boring and kind of like pointless sometimes to like organize and change the names in your projects and stuff, but it does help, especially if you come back to it later on. Oh, in FL Studio also, if you've got any instruments like in your playlist, if you do any effects or anything in here, make sure that you add them to the mixer track. I'll always like skip over those ones and then they won't be added. All right, so now I'm gonna start bringing in the rest of the drums. And with these, I like to basically I'll just loop the beat, leave everything playing, and I'll just individually bring in each one and try and just get them to a volume that sounds good. I wish there was like more I could say about doing the volumes and stuff, but it's really just kind of doing what sounds good to you. Like I said earlier, like referencing other songs and stuff. And yeah, just seeing what sounds right. I want to turn up this little Rhodes sound a little bit too. Yeah, this one. I'll maybe put like a chorus or something on it too, just to sauce it up a little. So when you're EQing, I know people talk about this in like every fucking mixing tutorial, but it is definitely important to like try and take out some of the low ends in certain sounds. If you see on here, on this sound, how it, you've got like some areas where it's lighting up like down here, even though it's small. Like you could just take that out. It's not necessary. And that's just gonna add more room for like the rest of the sounds and stuff that are in that area. I think I'm gonna add a little delay onto this. I just hear it. I like to do the ping pong on most like drum instruments, and then I usually turn the volume down quite a bit. So these little like high pitch perk sounds and stuff, you want to get pretty low. Sometimes even when you're mixing, get them a little lower than you think, because when you put on like a maximizer and start turning stuff up later on the master track, they're going to get really, really loud. This little shaker thing is hell loud too. And this little triangle is pretty harsh sounding, so I'm actually trying like do some more like EQ on this. So this right here is basically called reductive EQing, and pretty much it's just like making your EQ really small and taking out like very small frequencies. So you could see right here, I got the EQ thing turned like all the way down as far as it goes. And I'm just going to sweep this through here. It's going to get like loud. So just letting you guys know, like turn the volume down maybe a little bit. But I'm going to sweep the EQ through here, and you'll be able to hear like the frequencies where it's really harsh. And once we land on one, I'm just going to like bring it down and kind of take that frequency out. See, it's like right there how it sounds like kind of harsh. Get that out of there, man. That out of there. Whoops. And in drum sounds like this, you can usually see it pretty easily. Like the parts where it's lighting up the brightest, that's where it's like the loudest. So I'm gonna take out like these little parts right here. And that should make that little triangle fit better. I know that's a little extra to do, but when you get into like heavy mixing, everything is extra, and it all just adds up, and it makes everything come together better. So now I'm actually take the beat out of mono and hear how it sounds, because I do have some stuff panned. And so the beat should sound a lot different. And I'm going to try and kind of slowly start turning everything up more and more and get it basically as loud as I can before I start putting stuff on the master. When it comes to like the loudness of beats and like mastering and stuff like that, that's something that's kind of like sort of like a debated upon thing. There's not really a right or wrong answer, and both ways can get you like good results. But some people like to have their instruments like really quiet when they're mixing, and they'll mix stuff like as low as they can, and then they'll turn it up as much as they can on the master. Other people like to get it as loud as they can before the master, and then they turn it up more. Personally, for like these types of beats, I like to get them loud because I feel like they just hit harder once I put like Fruity Soft Clipper on them and stuff. So that's something the way that I like to mix, but it's really a preference thing. And I would say it's probably easier in the beginning to go lower and then turn stuff up with like the maximizer later on, but it's all preference. But I'm gonna get this stuff pretty loud. Another real important part of mixing too, keep this in mind, like while you're watching this tutorial, a big part of mixing is like taking breaks and then checking your mixes on like different speakers too. Obviously I'm trying to do this video all like in one go, so I can't really like play it on my monitors that I have here or go out to my car and play it. But if I were mixing like an actual song, that's what I would be doing, and I would probably mix it over like the course of like a whole day or even like 2 or 3 days or something. So keep that in mind too. Like take your time with mixing. Like making beats fast is fine, and sometimes that's like the best stuff, but mixing fast usually never comes out that good. So keep that in mind too. Like take your time and then give your ears a little break, come back to the mix, mess with this some more, and see how it sounds to you like the next day. And you're going to hear things a lot differently and probably make some good changes to it. So that's just like a little mixing tip and thing to keep in mind. But with this one, I'm sort of just keeping it basic. And it's just the beat too. Like another thing to keep in mind when it comes to beats is like you don't necessarily need to get like super extra when you're mixing a beat, because a lot of times artists are going to want to mix the beat like with their vocals anyways, so they might want to take some things out, add some things in, like change up some of the sounds or whatever. and it may get mixed down even more later on. So that's another thing kind of to keep in mind too with beats. But anyways, back to it. I'm gonna just kind of like slowly try and keep turning up just basically all these instruments, but keeping them still sounding consistent and not sounding like too harsh. If anything gets too hard, then I'm gonna start EQing it and messing with it a little bit. Whoops. What if I put this here, if it would sound cool. Yeah, I think that's how that was supposed to be. I'm gonna put like a little delay on this lead too, so like sauce it up a little. Maybe reverb too. With the effects too, if you're like new to using like reverb and delay and stuff, sometimes with effects like less is more. Like keep it real subtle with like the delay and stuff, and it's sort of like a thing that you'll hear it like subconsciously almost. Like you don't really hear it, but you still do, if that makes sense. Turn up the delay just a little bit. Turn up this crash too real quick, or this reverse one. Then I'm actually adding like one more crash too real quick when this drops. I'm gonna just turn up like everything real quick. Yeah, starting to come together. So I'm gonna basically just keep pushing it like as loud as I can without the kick and the bass getting like too loud or clipping. Sometimes clipping your kick and stuff is too loud, but I don't really want to do that on this beat. I'm gonna put some EQ on this little chant too. I'm gonna use this radio preset, or actually this old telephone one. I like to use this a lot on the Fruity EQ. Sounds cool. All right, so the mix is sounding pretty good to me now. What I'm gonna do is start throwing on my stuff that I normally put on the master, and then see how it sounds. So the first thing I like to add is Fruity Soft Clipper. If I already have the beat all the way turned up, like if I'm doing a real loud beat with a loud kick and stuff, by this time I'm gonna have the beat already hitting, like it'll be clipping when I get everything turned up all the way. This stuff with the instruments from Arcade, they're coming in like a little bit quiet. And so this beat is not like as loud necessarily as I would actually normally mix them, but when it's coming in lower than 1 dBs, I like to turn up the post gain right here on Fruity Soft Clipper. And this, like I said in the beginning, this is just the way I mix beats. I know a lot of people are haters on like clipping and using soft clippers and stuff, especially on like the master channels. But I don't know. For me, they just hit. So yeah, I like to turn this up, and this is gonna turn up the beat a lot. So be careful. And then once I get it over to where it's clipping, I'll bring down the threshold right here to where it's just underneath, like right here at 0 dB. And so now, this is another thing too that's kind of like a debated thing. A lot of people do not like to mix when they have their stuff on the master channel, but then there's also like a lot of people that do. So keep that in mind as well. Like a lot of people say like not to mix with stuff on your master channel, and it's a good reason too. Like in most DAWs, your stems don't export with the master effects turned on. So if I start mixing with stuff on my master channel, the stems are going to come out different than how I'm hearing them on here. So that's something to like keep in mind. But I don't know. I heard Mike Dean one time say that he mixes with the master channel like stuff on, and that was all I needed to hear. I started doing it. But after the soft clipper, I like to put on ozone as well. And then normally I'll just kind of EQ it again on here. This is like a stereo EQ, and then you could mess with the imaging a little bit too. Your imaging is like basically how wide your beat is. So this is showing you like an image of your beat from like the left side to the right side of the speakers. And you're going to want everything mainly like in this area where it's got like this little cone thing here. Mainly in here, and mainly like right in the middle, especially in hip hop, because like your bass and your kick are obviously going to be kind of the loudest. So you're going to get a lot of lighting up like in here, but you want to try and keep it like in this little cone thing, if that makes sense. And so this is good, but what this is telling me on here is I could actually like pan stuff a little bit more and it won't sound too bad. So I'm gonna do that with some of the hi-hats and stuff. Now when I go back to this, that little thing should be a little more spread out. So I'm gonna go back to here. I'm gonna do a little bit of the bass too. So this is like on ozone, this is what's called like I forget what it's called, but it only EQs like the stereo sounds. But I like to lower the bass on here a little bit. Now you just hit it with the limiter on here. I like to lower mine to just, I do negative 0.1. A lot of people, a lot of people master their beats to negative 1 dB. It's all preference. I mean, I just noticed like I used to do negative 1, and I noticed like a lot of producers' beats were just like a lot louder on YouTube and BeatStars and stuff. A lot of them is because they just turn it all the way up and they don't really care. But I started doing it to negative 1 personally. I know this is another thing where there's a lot of debate about it because like YouTube and Spotify compresses it to lower than this. So if you make a beat or make a song that's mastered this high, it's going to get compressed and all this stuff. But I don't know, man. This is just how I do it, like I said. This sounded pretty good to me, but now that everything's on here, like the bass is actually sounding a little bit too loud to me. So I'm going to kind of keep messing with this. And I'll say probably like the number one mistake I see a lot of new producers make, and then I myself like still make all the time, is having your bass and like your low end way too fucking loud. All the pro engineers say that like mixing low end is like the last thing that you learn. when you're a good engineer. And it seems like it's true because like bass is really, really hard to mix sometimes, especially if you're trying to do it on like headphones and stuff like that. But for me personally, I know like when I hear the bass on these headphones that I have, if it sounds like it's at the right volume to me, when I play it in my car or on bigger speakers, the bass sounds way, way too loud. So knowing that, right, like knowing how my headphones sound, I'm going to know that like the bass is a little bit too loud. So I need to probably turn it down. And I'm actually throw a transient processor on the kick real quick too. Pretty much what this plugin does, this is a little more like advanced of a plugin, but basically what this does is like it shapes the transients of the sound. So it's almost doing like, you know how this thing, you can change the sound. It's almost like doing that, but it's just in the effects, if that makes sense. But I'm gonna turn down like the attack on this kick a little bit so it doesn't hit like so hard. It's gonna be a little softer sounding, watch. So now I'm actually like bringing stuff down a little bit to kind of like bring it together a little more. I'm also add just like a tiny reverb on this clap too. I like to just stick with the default reverb for most instruments on FL. And really I only mess with 3 knobs, the dry, the wet, and then the decay right here. But usually I'll like turn that up a little bit and then just turn this down, like way down. I think that sounds pretty cool. This actually might be a little too much. Yeah, I'm gonna turn down the decay. Yeah. All right, I think that's pretty much gonna wrap it up, man. As you could see, the beat should be sounding a lot better than it did in the beginning. And I know I kind of talked a lot and went off a little bit, but if I was just doing this alone, this would have only taken me maybe like 20 or 30 minutes. Hope you guys learned something from this. Who do you guys hear on this beat? What do you guys want to see next? I know this tutorial was like a little basic, but I have a lot of people ask me about mixing and stuff. So I thought I would do one that's a little more simple. If people are liking this one, drop a like, drop a sub, drop a comment, and then maybe for the next one, I could do like a little bit more advanced tutorial. I could show you a little bit of different tips and tricks, a little bit of the different effects that I like to use to like sauce, excuse me, to sauce up my beats and all that. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna just let the whole beat play out. And until the next one, peace.